Hello, Starseeds, and welcome to this episode of Astrology Chats, where we're going to talk all about Saturn. And yes, we are going to also talk about your Saturn return. And since we are in a spiritually significant meteor shower right now, we are going to close this Astro Chat with a 2-card tarot pull for all signs for Saturn in the signs. Meteor showers all on their own have their own magic associated with them, so I will be covering that particular topic in a separate Astro Chat. But for now, this Astro Chat is all about Saturn. And Saturn can be a tough teacher, and as a result, can be feared. There is nothing to be afraid of with Saturn, even though the lessons can be tough ones. That being said, I'm not going to get into too much preamble about Saturn. There's a lot to cover in this episode, so let's get into it. Okay, Starseeds, welcome to the presentation all about Saturn, your Saturn return, and a 2-card pull for all signs considering Saturn's placement in your birth chart. So we're going to get into all of these fun topics of conversation about astrology and how you can find Saturn to empower yourself, especially since Saturn is a planet of karma and of time and is a hard teacher, but those lessons that can be considered difficult can be used to empower yourself, to gain power through knowledge of self. And so that is what these astrology chats are here for you to empower yourself. So let's get into what Saturn means. And now, as per usual, just to ground our conversation, because we can very easily go off on a tangent as it comes to a lot of these big topics in astrology and the cosmos. So starting with Saturn in the chart, what does Saturn mean to you personally in your own personal birth chart? Next, what is the Saturn return? You hear about it, what the Saturn return, and it seems like this scary thing. I actually found out through my research on Saturn that I actually got married on my Saturn return, and my Saturn sits in the house of partnerships. So I'm going to cover how you can kind of interpret that for yourself in the upcoming slides and topics. Next, we're going to go into Saturn in the sign. So once you know where Saturn is placed in your natal chart, what does that mean? If you have a Saturn that sits in Pisces, what does that mean? I'm going to get into that. And then finally, we're going to finish it off with a karmic card pull. Saturn rules karma, and so we're going to do a card pull also in honor of the meteor shower that is happening right now, just to harness that energy that is coming through the ethereal realm, and using the tarot card to kind of divinate and see how we can use the lessons from Saturn to best use the energies that are coming through at this time. So let's get into it, starting with Saturn in the chart. Okay, Saturn in your birth chart. What does Saturn mean in your birth chart when it comes to astrology? Saturn represents soul contracts and your karmic responsibility. And this is quite significant because Saturn is also, let's say, in charge of time. And so Saturn's placement also considers where there's karmic debt. Now, you don't have to believe in past lifetimes to gain insight from karmic debt. I can also interpret this from a perspective of the past. So let's say when you were 16, you had a relationship that was quite significant. You made some contracts that were deep. Perhaps you cheated on those contracts, depending on where Saturn sits in your chart. That may be something you have to tackle with. As you get older, hopefully you learn from those lessons and you turn into a person that no longer cheats or lies in relationships. That's just one perspective of looking at a past karma that needs to be equalized in the balance of the universe, let's say. You can check out my talk about how the planetary rulers of the zodiac, and that's really where I really like to sink my teeth into when it comes to astrology and its interpretations. And Saturn is equivalent to the god Cronus, which is both time and a teacher. And I pulled the image from that presentation to this presentation because it really embodies just what Saturn is, that sickle of time. Even if you think of the personification of death itself with the sickle, and death coming, that with the sickle, that comes with it this sense of that time is necessary, that there are laws to the universe, that there's a rise and a fall to things, and for us to be aware of the cycles of time and not to fight so much against it, or perhaps if there's like a karmic lesson to be learned, if we keep avoiding it, it will continue to come up, right? Okay, I know that was a little bit of a brief intro on Saturn, but you can check out my talk on planetary rulers. Also, I'm going to be doing an Astro Chat all about how Sailor Moon actually teaches you about astrology. It's really funny, like the way that their powers are and the way they transform is all lined up with what the planets actually mean in your chart. It's fantastic, actually. So that's to come, so stay tuned for that. But Saturn itself is really about time and a teacher. Saturn is also it rules Capricorn, and so we're also approaching Capricorn season, so I find it quite significant for us to talk about Saturn. So now we're going to talk about your Saturn return. What does your Saturn return mean? Now, your Saturn return kicks in about age 27 or 28. It is a time of coming into alignment with your lifetime's true mission and your life's true path. Now, this alignment will give you signs, like whether or not you are or are not aligned to your true life's path, your soul's purpose in this lifetime. Saturn will give you very clear signs if you are not aligned with your soul's true purpose in this lifetime, and if you're not in alignment with your calling and pursuing your passions. This will come up in a way that perhaps this is why astrology is great, to interpret what these indicators are in your life where it feels like things are not in flow, and it's because you're not really acting in accordance with what the mission is, and things will happen that feel really painful and abrasive, and it's because it's not because you're not in alignment, right? That's why. So that's where really paying attention to cues and kind of having that like sixth sense up here to kind of be like, okay, is this the right choice for me? Is this the right job choice if I'm going to have to sacrifice something else, right? Is this the right thing to sacrifice, right, in the grand scheme of things? So all of these choices and behaviors, if they're not in alignment with your true soul purpose, there'll be signs for you. Now, it's all about becoming a master with Saturn. By age 58, Saturn will have completed another 29-year journey around the sun. And so there's another Saturn return. And this typically lines up with retirement. And so it's another time period where individuals can take another look at your life and see if perhaps that purpose, that mission has changed. Perhaps there was an objective that was met, and now that star needs to shift, and you can shift over to other things, other purposes. So it's really cool how astrology kind of lines up. Personally, I got married on my Saturn return, as I mentioned before, and I just found that out by researching this. It's really funny how there's a part of you that almost knows these things and optimal ways to time things out so that you are in flow with what your life path is. Okay, so now we're at the fun part of the Astro Chat where we're going to go into Saturn in all of the signs. And so, as I've mentioned in all of my Astro Chats, when you took your first breath into this universe and you took everything in, you are imprinted with the cosmos, and that imprint is yours and yours alone. And so included in that is where your Saturn is placed, and that Saturn sits in a particular sign. Now I'm going to do a 2-card pull for each of the Saturn in the signs. I know that sounds confusing. You can also just do a read for what your sun, moon, or ascending sign is. We're also going to get into a little bit of a tidbit for each of the signs as to what it means in terms of the lessons that Saturn has for you specifically if you have that placement of Saturn. Okay, Starseeds, welcome to the magical card pull. I'm going to be using my Shadowscapes card deck, and in the edit I will hopefully have on, I'm going to point it the right side. Is this the right, this side? Yes. So I'm going to hopefully have the cards that I pull as on that side so that you can actually see them visually, and I'll have the timestamps, of course, for all of the Saturn in the signs. Now remember, if you don't know your Saturn, where your Saturn is placed, you can always get your astrological starseed blueprint from me for my interpretation of what your birth chart means, but there are also calculators you can get online so you can leverage this reading. But of course, you can always leverage the reading of your solar, moon, or ascending. So we're going to start with Aries, Saturn in Aries. So if your Saturn is placed in Aries, this means that you are highly resourceful and you have leadership properties. Your ability to start fresh helps you achieve your goals quite easily. And so with Saturn in Aries, you don't always necessarily feel comfortable with asserting yourself. So there's a lot here about you being able to start fresh and achieve your goals and having leadership, but there's a bit of discomfort with having that leadership responsibility. There's also a little bit of a tendency here for this to be almost too demanding, too much of the will because you know best, Aries, and that extends to just the vibe of what Aries is as well, right? And so let's do a 2-card pull for Saturn in Aries for the beautiful Geminid meteor shower they were experiencing right now, and as well as us coming into Capricorn season. We have the Chariot, and so that card, it's a beautiful card. We've got 2 unicorns pulling a maiden. There's a crab holding a little egg at the bottom here too. So Pearl of Knowledge, but I said I was going to do a 2-card pull. So what else do we have here? 8 of Cups. Okay, so the Chariot, if we think about driving forward, it's funny that the Chariot came up when I talked about the meteor shower, just because I was doing some digging into the Geminids and where they come from. The Geminids don't come from a comet, they actually come from an asteroid, which is named, I'm going to butcher this name, so I'm going to hopefully have in the edit the right pronounced version, the Pantheon. But the myth behind the Pantheon is that he was Helios, the sun god's son, and he wanted to prove his birthright to his friends because he told all his friends, like, hey, I'm the son of a god, and none of his friends believed him. So he went to his dad, was like, you know, I want to, you have to promise me to give me anything that I want. And so the king was like, okay, fine, I'll promise. And Helios' son Pantheon asked to drive his chariots of this. There's 2 horses that drove the sun across the sky, And Pantheon asked to drive this from his father. And his father was like, oh my gosh, no, you don't know how to drive that. But since he was bound by oath, he let him. So Pantheon drove the chariot. And since he was inexperienced and did not have, didn't have any training, and so the horses were coming out of control, and the sun was starting to scorch the earth. And so Zeus, threw a lightning bolt and killed him to prevent him from scorching the entire earth. So the chariot here, there's a lot of immense power here, and it's clarified with the Eight of Cups. And so this Aries is about delving into emotional power. But with Saturn, there's always a bit of a cautionary tale here, because there's about lessons. And so when it comes to a Saturn return, Aries, if you're approaching your Saturn return, the energies right now are high. There's a lot of ideas. There's a lot of paths you can take. But these two unicorns, your chariot needs to be wielded. It needs to have a goal. It needs to have soul behind things. And so when you think of things like, the cool things we can do with AI and stuff, right? That's great. They can do art, but where is the soul in that? And does it have direction so that, yes, you have power, but if unwielded properly, or if not wielded with care and with training, that can scorch the earth. Put there. So that's my little reading there for you, Aries, because you do have all of that energy and power coming through with the chariot, but make sure that it has some soul behind it. And just like I was saying, it's a karmic teacher that your behaviors are going along with what your true life path is, because you're going to get some signs, like hopefully no thunderbolts or anything like that if things get out of hand. Nothing quite so dramatic. Okay, so next we're going to go into Taurus. Oh, first, hold on. I'm going to leave this out. I'm going to go into what Saturn means for Taurus first. So if you have Saturn in Taurus, you are very persistent in carrying out your goals. You can be overly concerned with material possessions. I'm a Taurus. I can understand that a little bit. And in wanting to squirrel away too much for that proverbial rainy day and not actually enjoying the material possessions. So Saturn in Taurus comes with it a little bit of a possibility of hoarding things for sentimental value and whatnot, and perhaps things that are now causing issues with other parts of your life if you end up hoarding or perhaps buying too much of one thing because the world is gonna end. I don't know, but just this tendency to hold on to material possessions or put too much value on things that are just material is something to look for with Saturn in Taurus. But that persistency to get ish done, that is also a benefit of having the Saturn placed in Taurus. And so the first card that I pulled right away, I was going to just tuck it back into the deck, but that wouldn't have been fair, I don't think. I looked at it already, and so it's the Nine of Swords, and talk about tough teachers. That is definitely one. It's like looking up, there's like crows circling. It feels like this feeling of doom, but let's hope there's another card to clarify this one. Oh good, we have a knight to help us with it. A Knight of Pentacles. And pentacles are all about the material wealth, and Saturn is very earth realm alchemy symbol with the little line, earth realm oriented. And now that doesn't mean evil or anything like that. That just means this plane, because of course we're divine beings, but we're also having a somatic earth plane experience. And so the Knight of Pentacles, he's riding, I believe this is a swordfish, or a barracuda. And there's, oh my gosh, there's so much new stuff whenever I look at each of these cards. And so the pentacles are all about, as I said, material wealth, but not just that, value and the true value of things, the true nature of things are what pentacles are all about. So what is money versus what is me creating soup and gifting that to someone versus giving cash. That's what I mean by different value when it comes to Knight of Pentacles, and Knight comes with it that energy. And so Taurus, Knight of Swords means that there is quite a challenge coming up. And so as we come into Capricorn season, as we assess as the year is ending and coming into the new year of 2023, how we want to use our energies and how we want to transmute those challenges, Taurus, will be through looking at what's truly valuable in your life and leaning into that with renewed energy, riding that out. That will become clear. Pain is a funny way of reshuffling what your values are. So that's my reading for you, Taurus, for this meteor shower that we have right now. Next, we have Gemini in this first quadrant for Saturn in the signs. Now for Gemini, Saturn in Gemini, this is a good position for Saturn actually, but you do need to develop faith in the future. It will be important for you to discipline your mind and to learn to think and act methodically if you are going to be successful in anything. And so Gemini is all about the mercurial mind and thinking and analyzing and being methodical about things. Now, Saturn in this placement is great because Saturn's very methodical as well and rules oriented and restrictive in some ways. And so with Gemini, it's about ensuring that there is the discipline that Saturn brings. Gemini does bring with it this idea of like, now I'm doing this, and then now I'm doing that, and now I'm over here. So to just develop some focus and learn from Saturn in that way, and to have a little bit of faith. Doesn't have to always be explained or understood in a traditional empirical sense. Saturn in Gemini rather. Okay, so now the 2-card pull we have for Gemini, Saturn in Gemini, we have the High Priestess and the 6 of Pentacles. I love the High Priestess card. So I'm just going to show that off. The High Priestess and the 6 of Pentacles. And so you can see here the 6 of Pentacles. Through musical and creative endeavors, there is value to be had. I'm a staunch believer of that. The High Priestess comes with it knowledge of things that are felt rather than known mentally. And so just speaking of lessons that Saturn has for Gemini in terms of having faith, the High Priestess is about that learning of the inner knowledge, the inner knowing of things. And Gemini, Saturn and Gemini right now, when those two things come together, there's great value that you can bring to the world by not having to have everything be quite so understood or explained, or I'm just talking to myself sometimes, like you don't need like 3 sources of information for absolutely everything for you to believe in it. So that's my reading for you, Gemini. High Priestess, 6 of Pentacles. Okay, so now we're in the second quadrant. So alchemically with the signs, the first sign generates energy, the second sign gestates and concentrates that energy, and the third sign distributes it. And that's how you have a cardinal, fixed, and then mutable sign. I'm going to get into more of the alchemy of astrology on a later Astro Chat, but for now, let's get into what Saturn means in Cancer. So Saturn in Cancer, you are very protective and you worry a lot over your loved ones. You can be moody, fearful, and insecure, and your unconscious fear of being hurt by others can cause you to withdraw, or you can pull back from being too close to others from an emotional standpoint because you don't want to be hurt. And so the lesson there is that you have this capacity to care so much, but that fear can prevent you from actually going out and getting the love that you deserve. So the lesson in this life, if you have this placement, is to learn to reach out. And if you do get hurt, it's okay. You can pick yourself up and love again. And so for Saturn in Cancer, the 2-card pull is, we've got the 3 of Wands and the 4 of Cups. Wow, these are very dreamy cards. This 4 of Cups, there's a concern here of almost just looking into your reflection and being lost in a dream world. I myself, with my Neptune aspect, have been very guilty of this, where when things get tough, you can kind of just retreat into a dream world within yourself. The 3 of Wands here, though, which was the first card that was pulled for Saturn in Cancer, suggests a looking upward for fulfillment outside of self. There is this throwback to Christianity here with sacrifice, with the 3 crosses. And so I do think that there is a level of avoidance happening here right now, Cancer and Saturn, that's coming through. An avoidance of having to deal with a sacrifice that's necessary, or perhaps there is a languishing in a sacrifice that had to be made. Something to think about over this next meteor shower as we come into Capricorn. I do think, though, that there is hope here, even though this reading does have a bit of a melancholy tone to it, because you're looking forward into the future and you have these little friends here looking up there with you. So I think it's just a matter of grounding yourself, and don't let the fear of being hurt stop you from getting the love that you need, Cancer. Wolfie's a Cancer. My Wolfie's a Cancer, so I feel that. All right, next, Saturn in Leo. You tend to be self-reliant, conservative, and are extremely efficient. You may have difficulty expressing your emotions and your affections, which may make you appear to be cold and unloving. You need love, but many not know how to go about giving or receiving it, because Leo's all about the heart chakra and having big love. And so having independence and being self-reliant, with Saturn's influence here, there can be an appearance of being cold and unloving. It's just that there's a difficulty in expressing what those emotions are, even though you do have a big heart with Saturn in Leo. And now the 2-card pull I have for Saturn in Leo is the Moon and 10 of Cups. Oh, I love 10 of Cups. It's like Lover's card. So speaking of love and trying to find love, Saturn in Leos, the Moon, here's where it gets a little tough. The Moon can be, I love the Moon, but a lot of people are like, well, the Moon changes all the time and emotions change all the time and the Moon is ever changing, so you can't trust it. But the Moon also just has cycles, and so it's just a matter of getting in flow and getting in touch with the cycles. And so if you're in touch, then you can have the Moon's energies work for you. And so, and the mask, sometimes there is a need to have the mask, and there's a need to have many masks in order to play different roles in this incarnation. That's not anything to be ashamed of. I think there's a level of, there's a lot of mushrooms here too. So in terms of the Moon coming into play with you, Leo, the Moon is all about the emotions, the inner child, the inner mother, the inner wants, what that inner child wants is love. And if you have been spending your time being like a hustler and getting ish done, getting, things of monetary wealth in your world, that's great, but use this as a bit of time as we hit Capricorn season and it gets for the darkest night of the year, right? Or the longest night of the year coming up, It's a good time to pause and reflect and make goals about the types of relationships that you want to be having in the next year. So that's my reading for you, Saturn in Leo. Next we have Virgo. Saturn in Virgo, you tend to be industrious. Oh, Virgo always has that perfectionist in there, right? So Saturn in Virgo is industrious, efficient, practical, exacting, scientific, organized, thrifty, studious, economical, and punctual. You have common sense and the ability to manage others, but you may be a bit of a perfectionist. And this can sometimes also come across as being a bit like bossy and telling people like what to do constantly and not necessarily taking in constructive feedback, let's say. So my perfectionist Virgos, I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it's just a matter of just being a little gentler on yourself sometimes, especially with that Saturn placement. And now a 2-card pull for our fun meteor shower going on. We've got the 6 of Cups. I love the 6 of Cups because it's all about looking at your childhood, looking into your past to gain power from that nostalgia. And we've got the 8 of Cups again. About looking into emotional depth in order to gain power, to go down deep, to find something that was lost, perhaps a memory or something like that. And speaking of memories, nice memories. So Virgo, I know that you're very practical and industrious, but maybe it's okay to go into that mushy side of yourself, go down deep into that emotional side of yourself when you used to have tea parties with your imaginary friends, and see what knowledge that they have for you to bring to the surface in this upcoming year as the meteor shower comes and brings us all of that star intel in our dreams and stuff. So that is it for this second quadrant for Cancer, Leo, and Virgo. Okay, now we're in the fall quadrant of the astrological wheel. It's really great how the cosmos and astrology is just this observation of what already is, and knowing astro, and for example, if you're born in the fall season, that of course comes with it certain personality traits, which is expressed, especially in this quadrant of Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius. We're just in the tail end of Sagittarius right now, and Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So now Jupiter it's more of an expansive planet. And so that's why you hear about conjunctions between Jupiter and Saturn, for example. You have those competing energies that happen in the cosmos and have an impact on us. Okay, so Libra, with Saturn in Libra, there is a need for you to cooperate and share in harmony, patience, and love with other people. Marriage or partnerships may be restricting, requiring hard work and discipline so that you may learn the lessons of cooperation rather than competition. So that is the key here. Cooperation rather than competition. And that can be tough energies with Saturn there, because there can be a lot of pressure placed on relationships with this placement. And now 2-card pull for the meteor shower. We've got Queen of Swords and the 3 of Pentacles. 3 of Swords. Hold on. Queen of Swords and then 3 of Pentacles. Okay. 3 is a magic number, and the Queen of Swords is all about cutting through the bullshit, speaking clearly on a bed of beauty. So being very eloquent with your speech magically. So we are in a time right now where being very clear and really how language is wielded, the sword can also represent that. Swords are air signs. Swords are about the double-edged sword, but also how in language you can have multi-meanings, double meanings, the law of duality as it comes to magic. And so Libra, Saturn in Libra, as it comes to cooperation and partnership, what this says to me is that when it comes to your relationships, there is a need here for you to be very clear about where you stand in them. There's no room for there to be anything less than that. Right? All of the unification of past, present, future coming together, and people that you are in cooperation or in harmony with will have to understand that about you. We're now going to go into Saturn in Scorpio. That was Saturn in Libra. Now we're going into Saturn in Scorpio, where Saturn is very at home in Scorpio. So Saturn in Scorpio, you can be very self-disciplined, you have executive ability, and are perceptive and extremely capable. I'm a Saturn in Scorpio. In the 7th house though, so that I will get into that in just a moment. You may have psychic ability. People may find you difficult to understand because of your reserved exterior and secretiveness. Now, Saturn in Scorpio, babies. Now, also I should have mentioned that Saturn doesn't take up isn't super fast to go around the sun, and so I think it stays in a sign for about 1 to 2 years. So you will share this placement of Saturn with a few other people. It'll be interesting to see where. So those other Saturn and Scorpio babies, holla at me. It's a tough placement. There's a level of self-sabotage I feel that sometimes happens with Saturn and Scorpio. This idea of almost even psyching yourself out from actually doing things, and there's this idea of not necessarily trusting things, and so not feeling comfortable with letting people in on the real you. I've had to work a lot on that. And so Saturn in Scorpio, we've got 7 of Wands, which is very combative, and Queen of Pentacles. My Earth Queen. There we go. Here we go. So this is saying there looks to be here a conflict. This can be within or something that is being expressed. The Queen of Pentacles here, the Pentacles are the Earth signs, and an expression of, I think, the Earth speaking out. And what we're talking about, Saturn and Scorpio living in alignment, and also Saturn is very earthy. And the idea of being grounded, being aligned, knowing that what we were on this earth plane to do. In your dreams, Saturn and Scorpio, it should be screaming at you to be really leaning into your gifts and fully expressing those and learning the things that you need to learn in order to do what you need to do here. There's a really big need for it to serve the earth in that way. It's calling for it right now because there's a lot attacking us right now. Okay, so that's Saturn in Scorpio. Next, we have Saturn in Sagittarius. You are intuitive, philosophical, independent, and persistent. Mental maturity may come a little later in life, but this promises success, Saturn in Scorpio. Saturn in Sagittarius. You're intuitive, philosophical, independent, and persistent, but mental maturity may come later on in life and promises success. That's good news. You're generous, and a wonderfully developed sense of responsibility helps you have devoted friends. So if you have responsibility to folks that you are near and dear to. And so that intuitive quality is always there when it comes to a Sagittarius placement. However, this idea of always being on the go onto the next thing, because Sagittarius is also a mutable sign with Scorpio there, the lessons to be learned of, finding a ground, as I was saying with Earth, just finding a home base, because yes, it's great to have eyes in the sky and to be quite philosophical, but there's also the practical application of really good ideas, right? And so Saturn in Sagittarius, we have Page of Swords, that youthful energy with words and speaking, and that energy, mental energy, and the Two of Cups. with love. Oh my gosh, the language of love is in the cards right now for you, Scorpio and Sagittarius. So I think trust in your intuition right now. And I really like Two of Cups suggests a partnership on an emotional level. It doesn't have to be necessarily a lover's one, but it does suggest an intimate relationship, and one where I think you're going to be able to speak freely, which is great. These wings and youthful energy as it comes to the idea of expression, which is what swords are very much associated with. And that, yeah, youthful energy. Perhaps there's someone in your life that makes you feel young again, or someone from the past, something like that. Okay, that's it for you, Saturn in Sagittarius. Okay, Saturn in Capricorn, we have, you understand that time and suffering serve a purpose, and that happiness is not the final goal of existence. You may find it difficult to divide your energies between work and play. You, however, have the ability to translate abstract concepts into concrete terms, which is quite a gift. So being able to take an idea and communicate it so that from a project manager perspective, this is a great tool, because to take an abstract idea of we want to build something and here's the model, but then these are all the steps in which to actually enact that. And so Capricorn, my 2-card pull for you are, I've got the 3 of Wands and the Devil, which is actually your card. Not Saturn in Capricorn, but Capricorn itself. The card is the Devil. But this is read sometimes it's like all the carnal nature, the darker side of human nature. But that is also energy, and it can be wielded. It's like your shadow. If you don't look at it, then it's going to cause much more problems. This is all about suggests a journey, perhaps maybe to come looking outward. And so Capricorn, that idea of taking the abstract and bringing that down into the concrete realm, this is what it kind of is talking about, leaning into that. So looking outward for inspiration and bringing that down. Now, bringing that down in the practical sense also comes with it. You have to learn how to pivot, Capricorn. Sometimes the best laid plans, it doesn't always go the way that you hope it will. This is coming from a PM perspective. There are ways to pivot. If you force it and it's not going in that direction, it's going to have, I think, much more detrimental effects. You have to read the signs and learn to okay, I know that we really, really wanted this, but we are going to have to compromise for the, for the good. But not the idea of for the greater good that only a select few get to decide what that is. That's ridiculous. Okay, so next we have Saturn in Aquarius, where you possess practical common sense, self-discipline, and inner sources of strength, which provide stamina. And although humane in nature, with a friendly and sympathetic disposition, you may have some difficulty in understanding other people's goals. You need to learn tolerance for other people and develop forgiveness. So Aquarius is a fixed sign, and with Saturn placed in Aquarius, Aquarius is also ruled by Saturn. Remember, I talk about this a lot, where Saturn has 2 rulers, both Saturn and Uranus. And this is because Uranus wasn't discovered till later. So these 2 energies are at play in Aquarius, where when Saturn is placed there, there's much more of this emphasis to be dogmatic in what you think the greater good is. As I was saying, when you're trying to bring things into reality, that the idea of your way or the highway is not the greater good, even though you may think in your heart of hearts is. It's much better to be creative about expressing what you think will get the goal, get people to see your point of view before forcing it down people's throats, because then perhaps people will have some input and it can make the whole idea better. And that's really what the age of Aquarius is about when it comes to sympathizing with everybody's needs and having empathy in that kind of way for our human family. And our 2-card pull for Saturn and Aquarius, we have 8 of Pentacles. Very Indra's web in terms of weaving realities. What I was saying when being clear about your reality map, your reality web. And we've got the Queen of Cups. Love the Queen of Cups, the Queen of the emotions. But as with Cups, she's balanced on a lily pad and very serene, and so you just need to make sure that she just keeps that nice serene waters. Don't like ruffle things too much, just breathe through everything, nothing sudden. So the energies I see here is just spend your time weaving your webs. You don't need to be too public about it. There is this level here of time and turtles upon turtles all the way down, and that everything that you do in this life echoes outward, expands out more. So what this says to me, Saturn and Aquarius, that you do have a sense of stamina as it comes to achieving your goals. So keep working away at them. There's really great energy where that can happen, but there is a level here that emotional balance is quite important right now. That you can be in a really good place one day, and then maybe another day it's just like, oh my gosh, I can't deal with this. But if that's the case, that's okay. You don't need to do anything where you don't need, like, nothing. There is no pressure. Try to take that pressure off. Things are in their own time. Saturn Aquarius. And then finally, Pisces, my friend. I think the next pull for the new moon, because it'll be in Capricorn, I'll be starting with the Capricorn. So I know, I get it. My last name is at the end of the alphabet. I always get called last for things. So Saturn in Pisces, we've got, you may have the sense that your present life's troubles are due You may have the sense that your present life's troubles are due to actions from the past. And this is probably the truth. You must reap what you have sown in previous lifetimes or the past, and Saturn comes to exact his payment. So this can express itself in depressions with Saturn in Pisces placement, as well as you just tend to feel a lot more sorrow than the average person, just because you're this hyper awareness and sensitivity to the karma of all things. However, it doesn't need to be doom and gloom, because those lessons, once they are learned, there are good things that can come from that. Creativity, the building of things, the creation of things, the collaboration and joy of things. And so Pisces, that's a lesson to be learned, that yes, you have to reap what you sow, but that can be a joyful expression. It doesn't have to be so sad all the time. And so my 2-card pull for you, we've got King of Wands, this lovely strong fella to get out there. I think this came out last time with my Pisces friends. And 4 of Pentacles. Yeah, accumulation of efforts for value. And so yeah, this is really saying a lot of like, go out there to create your magic. The wands are about fire signs and generation of things, and I know that it's not really a comfortable thing for you, Pisces, but there's a lot of knowledge that Pisces has of the darkness that can be used to empower those and provide value in this time. So King of Wands, 4 of Pentacles, that's my read for you, Saturn in Pisces, as we close this Astro Chat. So thank you. That was Saturn in all of the signs. Before I wrapped up the call, I just wanted to have a quick shout out about Saturn in the house systems, because I did mention that my Saturn is in the house of partnerships, which is technically Libra's house, but Saturn in Scorpio. And this is because of the way that the housing and the signs line up. I don't have my chart with me right now, but I will hopefully have a little graphic that I can show off on the side that kind of shows that to some degree. Now, you can see in your birth chart where your housing system lines up with the signs. There's usually, if you're on a cusp, that comes with it its own thing as well. So that's something to be interpreted, more to look into. So maybe this isn't an end, it's more of like a to be continued, so to speak. And so I just wanted to thank all of you for joining me this evening on this astrological chat about Saturn, our karmic teacher in astrology. I hope that you found that this chat was informative and you can use it to empower yourself. And so for more magic, you can always check us out on our website at sacredstomaalchemy.com, and I will have a link to get your own starseed blueprint for just $33 in the description below. And so until next time, have a beautiful evening, beautiful day, wherever you may be.